Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Pappy Tinkers and part 2 of the Italeri Fury Sherman build. Hopefully you are bearing with me as I learn some of the editing that goes along with making these videos. We continue building the lower hull and attaching the only partial exhaust that comes with the kit. I'll also start addressing some of the shortcomings of this kit. One of the issues is that the kit is a mixture of old and new tooling, and the instructions do not always point out the correct parts to use, and the pictures aren't always the right pictures that go along with the new parts. One of the issues is with the transmission cover. This is supposed to be a rough cast piece. I mean really rough texture. But this is molded pretty smooth. Additionally, one of the attachment points is in a difficult place to clean up. I'll show you how to correct this a little later in the video with some Mr. Surfacer 500. And as you can see, the fit isn't quite right with the lower hull. It may require some clamping if you're using a slower glue. That's one of the things I like with using a liquid glue like 10x7 or Micromark's Same Stuff liquid glue. I did just find a bottle of the Tamiya orange glue that's supposed to be a little bit faster drying and hopefully doesn't smell as bad. Maybe we'll give that a try a little bit later on in this build. Here is another one of the issues with the kit. This one is on the rear engine access plate. The instructions picture using the plate with 2 doors, but you should be using the plate that only has the single door. Both have the same part number, and both of them are on the same sprue, so it's easy to get them confused. Not to mention, they didn't include the rest of the exhaust system. On the good side of this is that it's very difficult to see on the completed kit, so don't sweat it if you already put the wrong one on. And actually, with the new parts included with this kit, I expected that less cleanup would have been necessary on this new part. I just attached the main towing bracket and pintle. The kit does not include the 2 smaller hooks that go on either side like some of the other kits do. But if you're just wanting a Sherman to look like the movie tank that's going to sit on your display, this will be fine. If you're an accuracy buff, this may not be the kit for you. And these are the 2 front extensions for the lower hull. They fill the gap that was left over from using the cast hull, and they attach pretty easily. I need to point out something that I didn't notice in the beginning. Italeri built these reinforcement sections into the hull for strength, but they create a wavy texture on both sides of the hull. And if you're planning on not putting the logs on, this could stand out like a huge sore thumb. At this point, I'm not sure if just sanding it will fix it or if you'll need putty. but you're definitely going to see it if you do not put the logs on. I was wrong when I said that the main gun barrel was slide molded. It's from the old tools and certainly has a nice little seam on it. It's not as bad as most toothpiece barrels, but it still needs some work to look good. There's a number of ways of cleaning off the seam, and my usual way is just to hold the barrel against a sanding stick and just keep turning it, alternating, spiraling up and down. If you happen to have an extra aluminum barrel, that's a great option and it'll save about 5 minutes of time. I spray a mist coat of Tamiya fine white primer on the lower surfaces to help with adhesion. Since a lot of my paint is a little on the old side, I figured it wouldn't hurt. I did have some paint peel off on the last kit I did, probably because I was too cheap to go buy new after it had sat unused for a couple years. In reality, you can probably skip this step. Green paint going on green plastic, it would be pretty difficult to see if anything was actually missed or not. If you want the main gun to elevate, take care in gluing the pieces together and only get glue on the center section that I point out here. When you're gluing the two halves of the turret together, don't worry if you get a little sloppy with the glue. These cast turrets had a lot of casting texture on them, plus the grind lines can be very coarse. Usually the grinding marks went straight up and down, so when you sand this seam, keep that in mind, up and down, not front to rear. And don't worry about using fine grits in this area. I've seen some that look like they were sanded with bricks. There are some molding lines in the rear that do not belong as well. If you're building this as the Fury, all the extra gear is probably going to hide a great deal of that anyways. On the rear of the upper hull is an outline of the hand crank that went on the early Shermans. Remove that, as it was only used on the Shermans that had the right radial engine. The Fury used a Ford V8. Use a razor saw to cut off the front fenders. These fenders were used with the earlier narrow tracks. The E8 suspension is much wider and the kit does include the proper fenders. You might be thinking that you won't use these kind of saws very often, but they're really invaluable tools. And a big one like this makes quick work on bigger cuts, and the blades last forever. Mr. Surfacer is like a real thick primer, or a real thin putty. Take your pick, but it's very easy to use. All the instructions on the bottle is something I can't read, but I can tell you that it's solvent based. Smells like lacquer thinner to me. Keep that in mind for when you go to clean up. If you try to use water or alcohol, you're just going to have a sticky mess. Grab an old stiff brush, the stiffer the better, and just start dabbing it on. Don't try to use as a regular paintbrush. Think more of sponge painting. Don't worry about being precise. Just dab, dab, dab. Get the mold seam above and below it. cast armor has a very rough surface, and that's what this will replicate. Dab some on the little side door of the turret too. The way that seems to work best for me is to put some on, let it flash for a little bit, then dab it some more. Mr. Surfacer can be used with or without a primer and still have good adhesion. The transmission covers were very rough. Don't worry about getting too much on. If you don't like how it looks, just sand off. It sands off real easy. While this seems like a tedious process, the results are well worth it. The texture that these surfaces will have will make any weathering and dry brushing really stand out. If you have another Sherman kit from Italeri or one of the old Tamiya ones and compare them, you'll see exactly what I mean. In the next episode, we come across a couple more issues with this kit, and I'll show you how to fix them. I'll also be building the rest of the turret and the upper hull, and with a little luck, begin the painting and weathering of this kit. So be sure to check back soon. Better yet, hit that like and subscribe button so you'll know when it comes out. Well, that's all for this one. See you next time on Pappy Tinkers.